And I would just like to take a few minutes to talk to you about the steps that are necessary for conducting the consultations in country. The, the first step is really for the countries to ask themselves what are the desired outcomes of this consultation. What is it that they plan to gain at the end of the day, you know? And in asking that questions, they would also want to select the consultation method. Now, what kinds of method am I going to use in my country to be able to do the consultation with the relevant stakeholder groups? Is it going to be workshops? Is it going to be focus group discussions? Is it going to be meetings? Is it going to be a survey, questionnaire, etc., etc.? And another important step is for the countries to define what issues am I going to consult on. Of course, you have different stakeholders, and each stakeholder's needs may be different. And so you might want to think about the issues that you're going to be consulted on. For example, if you are doing consultation with forest-dependent communities, including indigenous people, maybe some of the issues that you might want to consult with them includes land tenure issues, issues about benefit sharing, issues about what kind of a proper inclusive policy should be put in place for REDD, issues about what do they think at the end of the day what do they think at the end of the day the activities that countries should put in place in order to make sure that they have reached the desired outcomes for REDD. And once these issues are identified, then the countries are also required to do a stakeholder identification and analysis. Actually, it's by doing the analysis, it's by doing the stakeholder analysis that enable you to target who the relevant stakeholders are. And part of this analysis is looking at who are the drivers of deforestation in your countries, what are the underlying causes of deforestation in your countries, who are the people that have the most to gain or the most to lose in your respective countries. So by doing this kind of analysis, it will enable you to identify who the relevant stakeholders are. For example, at the national level, we know that there are drivers of deforestation that are outside of the forest sector, to include agriculture, infrastructure, planning, energy, etc. So this is considered to be one stakeholder group. In the private sector, we know that there are timber associations, illegal loggers, we have logging industrial loggers, we have the charcoal associations. These are considered as particular stakeholder group. And a third but important stakeholder groups are the forest-dependent indigenous people. So once you do this identification of stakeholders through the analysis, it will enable you to target, when you do your regional consultations, to target these consultations to this specific stakeholder group in order to move this process forward. Again, another important step is once you have done step 1 through 6, then you go and indeed conduct the consultations at the regional level with the various stakeholder groups. And then step number 8 requires you to develop a kind of communication and outreach strategy that will enable you to reach your broader target group. And this communication strategy should take into consideration, appropriately cultural channels and mediums of communication that will be necessary for you to reach out to the various stakeholder groups, particularly the forest-dependent indigenous people and other forest community. And last but not the least is that countries are required to also, develop a feedback mechanism that will enable these various stakeholder groups, particularly the indigenous people and forest-dependent people, to be able to voice out their issues, so that at the end of the day, the information that you glean from all these different stakeholders are reflected back into the planning and decision-making process for REDD, are reflected back into the designing of inclusive proper REDD strategies and policies, are reflected back into making sure that the institutional setup and the institutional framework that countries put in place is really inclusive, is really transparent, and it is creating an enabling environment for active participation of forest-dependent people, including IPs and other stakeholders. And of course, it's important to disseminate all the information that is gleaned from the consultation processes, as this creates greater transparency and accountability at the end of the day. This is my last slide, and it's going to tell you some few lessons that we learned from some of the RPPs that we have seen and reviewed to date. Some important points include that consultation should really start early, and it should allocate sufficient time and resources in order for the country to be able to reach out to forest-dependent communities, including indigenous people. And it is also important for the government to maybe think about subcontracting out the consultation process to a local NGO that has the comparative advantage and experience in implementing these kinds of workshops, consultations in the past. And in doing so, it will help to build credibility, it will help to improve transparency, and it will help to improve accountability mechanisms. But more importantly, it fosters partnership between, the local NGOs as well as the governments. We have developed a very good comprehensive guidance note on consultation and participation, which you can find in the FCPF website. At the same time, we have also developed a very good PowerPoint presentation that goes into detail on all of these issues that I just touched upon. I hope that you have the opportunity to look at that PowerPoint so that next time we meet, we can have more meaningful discussions, on this topic. I look forward to seeing you soon and to having this kind of conversation with you. Thank you.